points that I would like.
You're a good example of what I was talking about.
I would just like to comment one thing.
Please.
When it comes to the knowledge of Iqbal here in the West, a couple of years ago, when I finished high school, at the last year of high school, I had religion and philosophy as a subject. So I went over to my philosophy teacher and asked her, do you know Iqbal? She said no. Do you know Ghazali? She said no. Do you know Ibn Sina? She said no. So we actually have a huge problem here in the West, and that's our responsibility to change that. That the Arab and Muslim philosophers of the Middle East in general, or Pakistan or India, are not well known here in Europe in general. So we actually have a responsibility both to translate and to present their great work, because the work they did is actually what was the building stone for the later European philosophers. So we have a great responsibility there. But yeah, thank you very much. I actually feel very, very honored and blessed to sit amongst very intellectual men.
So short is speech.
Oh.
Thank you, Tareq.
Just very shortly, I'm 21 years old. I've just moved to Copenhagen. I'm originally from a village called Vejle, which is amazing. Just moved to Copenhagen. I'm studying law. I'm at the second year, and beside that, I'm also very active in the Danish public debate. Good. And write a lot in something called Politiken, which is a Danish newspaper. My presentation will be revolving primarily two things. The first thing is Muslims and democracy nowadays, and in that subject I will try to get some of Iqbal's ideas and present them. And the other thing is Iqbal and others' criticism of democracy, which I also find very, very important. And so in general, the main focus will be, that's what I find very important, is how young European Muslims view democracy today, and what is the task that lay upon us for the coming generations and years. To begin with, I would actually like to take you guys back a couple of weeks. 3 weeks ago, I was in London. I was visiting Dr. Tareq Ramadan in Oxford. Tareq Ramadan is very well known for a couple of books. He's written a book called To Be a European Muslim, and also a book called The Arab Awakening, which is also focusing a lot on democracy. But I met him in his office in Oxford, and suddenly he started talking about Iqbal and some of his ideas. And that was actually, which is very funny, the first time that I heard about Iqbal. And then I got back home and I got the invitation to come here today. And I decided to, okay, I have to figure out what this thing is about. I couldn't be sitting up here and not knowing anything. So I started studying and have read a couple of books the last couple of weeks and been very, very fascinated by this very amazing man. And it's probably an area that I will be focusing on a lot the coming weeks. But the thing is, just to go back to Tareq Ramadan, he's like, in my view, a modern form of Iqbal. He's taking many of Iqbal's ideas and tried to implement them in Europe today. And therefore I found some of his thoughts very, very interesting. The first and the most important main idea is that there's actually no contradiction between society rooted in Islamic idea and democratic principles of equality, liberty, and pluralism. To illustrate that, I often make fun of my Danish friends, but I mean it. I tell them that actually we live in probably the most Islamic country in the world, which is Denmark. If you look at the society as a society, and if you look at the values that the society is rooted in, it couldn't be more Islamic, whether it's society, whether it's the economics or politics. So we can learn a lot about that. The other thing is, which I also make fun of, I've just written an article for this newspaper that is going to come next week, which is called that Dansk Folkeparti, which is the very immigrant hating party in Denmark. So I've written an article called Dansk Folkeparti is the most Muslim party in Denmark. And it's going to provoke a lot of reactions, but I actually mean it, because if you take away their views on immigration, some of their main and core ideas when it comes to elders, when it comes to the youth, to society, couldn't be more Islamic. So you have to take the dialogue and you have to take the discussion if you want to move people from where they stand. One thing that Tareq Ramadan has said in the idea of that democracy is the natural political state of Muslim majority societies. And he's actually put it very perfectly in this quote. He said, "From the outset, Muslim scholars in their work of interpretation distinguished between divine authority on one hand and human authority on the other hand, which in social affairs must manage the primary sphere of the permitted through consultation, which is shura, and a majority decision-making process." all this could sound very, very complex. So to try and take it down to a level where we could all understand it. Why is this point so important? The thing is that, for my sake, I'm the second generation. My dad came to Denmark 20 years ago, and I'm the second generation. I'm born and raised in Denmark. And today you are seeing a complete generation who's born and raised in Denmark and is still raised up with a huge identity conflict, whether it comes to religion or to culture. When I'm in Denmark, I'm called a foreigner. I'm not Danish. When I go to Lebanon or Palestine, where my parents are from, I'm called a European because I'm not from there. So suddenly you stand there and you don't know what you are. And that also, when you talk about religion and the focus that has been on Muslim youth the last 10 or 15 years, you can't help people doubting their self and doubting where they come from originally. Just a second. Yeah. So, as you also mentioned, in 2 weeks we have something called Byrådsvalg, which is the local elections. And already now, 2 days ago, Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is the extreme form of Islam, went out and said that you're not supposed to go out and vote. The interesting thing that happened, that they've been saying this the last 20 years. And the funny thing is, each and every single time, the media are surprised that they're saying that. And it's no surprise, because I can tell you guys that in 4 years, they'll say the exact same thing. But the thing that changed this year is that 2 hours later, the thing called Islamic Trossamfund, which is a huge organization, actually went out and said the exact opposite. So I'm very positive when it comes to the future. You're seeing a whole other organization of the Muslim youth in Denmark in general. But it's very, very important to understand their particular interpretation of Islam, and to try to explain them that to participate in democracy is not against the idea of the divine in general. So we actually, as Muslims, has a responsibility to participate in democracy wherever we are. So, as I told you guys, a couple of weeks ago I started studying Iqbal, and I have a lot of time to do that too. And what I also found very interesting is, first of all, his ideas on democracy, but also his very critical ideas on democracy too. One thing that, if you look in history, we've had democracy in Denmark for almost 150 years. And this thing that we have called Grundloven, which is the constitution, has not changed, only 2 times since that. So the idea of Iqbal and others is that democracy also has to change and has to develop. You can't keep the form of democracy we had 150 years ago in Denmark and not change it. So it's very important for me as a Muslim and having black hair to say let's change democracy, but because suddenly people will think that I want dictatorship or anything else. But, yeah, exactly. But as a society, we have a responsibility to constantly develop local democracy and also national democracy in general, if we want to improve the society. And to give you guys some examples, because the last couple of years we've had the Arab uprising, or the Arab Spring as it is called. And the thing is, each and every single time when we have Muslim parties, Muslim regimes taking power democratically, they are also, every single time they are removed from the power. If you go back to 98 in Turkey, when Erbakan and Miligaric, they took power, the military went in and removed him as the leader. The same thing has happened in Egypt and in Palestine with Hamas and other places.
In Algeria.
In Nigeria too, and Algeria. So why am I mentioning this point? Because oftenly when you are discussing with, let's call it extreme Muslims, they say that democracy is not, it doesn't go with Islam. So we as other Muslims and Europeans have to prove them wrong, because if every single time when somebody Muslim comes to the power and you remove them, then it's a very good argument for the extremists to say, see, we were right from the beginning. So we have to give people the time and the patience to implement their interpretation of Islam. Yes, just a second. So, last but not least, and that would be like my final conclusion before we open up, is first of all, as European Muslims, we have to take both Iqbal's and Tareq Ramadan's and others' ideas of how to implement democracy and Islam in Europe, and we have to accept the ideas that, like for my sake, I'm never going back to an Arab country. This is my country, Denmark is my country, and I'm staying here, and I have a responsibility towards this country, and I have a responsibility to prove them wrong and show them that I can live here both as a Democrat and as a Muslim, and that the two things does not contradict. The other thing is that some of these things also takes time. That doesn't mean that we can just lean back and relax, but some things with the generation just take years before we manage to get to the point where we are today. And last but not at least, Europe also has a responsibility. Europe is a very general word, but in the Western world we have a responsibility to constantly take some of Iqbal's and others' ideas and try to improve the democracy as we know it today. So yeah, that would be my main 2 points. No, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tareq. We had a good time for discussion. I'm sure there will be many questions and comments, but we start with some remarks or questions from Professor Sharif. Would you like, you had some...
Yes, that's okay, fine. Sorry, when is it taken? That's okay, yeah, I can be heard very easily. Yeah. There is no need, there is nothing to add to what my brother said. You see, it's very important that Iqbal has given his message to the youth. And yes, he was desirous of spreading his vision. And he said, Khudaya arzu meri yahi hai, mera noor basirat aam kar de. So he prayed to Allah that other people, that should come and spread this message to the youth. Because Iqbal knew, that the old generation, the old people could not do anything else. So he addressed them, and Iqbal, talked to them very nicely. He appreciated them, and, that he welcomed them when they came to see him. But there is only one thing, that he is right, when he says, that Iqbal's message should be spread. The practical step is, that first of all, that part of Iqbal should be taken from his works that relates to the youth and their problems. And the second thing is, poetry, it should be explained in very simple and easy way, so that they could understand that. And moreover, I think that Iqbal society in Denmark can do a lot, that they can invite the people, students, And I think that if they are given some financial background or money, they can, publish books. They can publish books, and then those books can be given to the readers, to other people, to the public, And moreover, I think there should be some meetings as well, you see, where the scholars or the people, those who know Iqbal, they should come forward and talk to the youth and invite questions from them and then answer their question then and there. So this is one thing. And the second thing is, that if you have continuous, permanent, on permanent basis, if you have meetings here and the people invite them and then talk about Iqbal, the best thing is, to select certain topics, that which relate to the contemporary life, especially, for the people, those who are here. First of all, you have to tell them that Iqbal's message is not meant for Muslims only. It is not confined to them. Iqbal's message is of universal nature. When Iqbal's first book, Persian book, was published, Asrar-e-Khudi, Professor Nicholson, he has done a great favor to the Muslims. He translated that book into English, and then, that he wrote a letter to Allama Iqbal and said, I have received a copy of your book. I want to translate it in English. Would you allow me? And Allama Iqbal showed that letter to his friends, and Iqbal's eyes became tearful. And they said, well, you must be very happy because that you have got a letter of congratulation. They are, going to translate your book. And he said, actually, I wanted to arouse the Muslim from their slumber. They did not understand its significance. And a European has understood its importance, and he is going to do this one. And Professor Nicholson asked him, you say that your program is of universal nature, but you have addressed the Muslim and Islam also. Why is that? Now, Iqbal said, so first of all, there should be a group or community, those who know my message. When they know my message of Islam, then it should be spread to other human beings. So naturally, there should be a group. So if you also do that, here, for instance, it's very nice, I highly appreciate, that you have given these very useful suggestions, to spread Iqbal's message in this country. The best thing is, please have regular meetings and select certain topics from Iqbal's verses. So far as I'm concerned, I have translated Iqbal's 5 or 6 very lengthy poems from Urdu into English to some extent, yes, So the selection, it's going to be published inshallah very soon, especially Iqbal's complaint, Shikwa. So it is going to be published very soon, inshallah, in March, and there will be very big program, in London. So he has invited, that people, from America as well, like that, I think, that it is our moral duty as well, to tell the people that Iqbal's message is multi-purpose. Multi-purpose, that it has got, economics as well, politics as well is there, mysticism, so many things are there. So we have to select. So what I have done, I have explained those books, those lengthy poems in Urdu. Shikwa, it has been done. Jawab-e-Shikwa, answer to the complaint, although it was, they're done by Professor Arbery. But I have done that not in versified translation, it is in the prose form, so that the people should know the gist, the spirit of that book. Iblis ki Majlis-e-Shura and Masjid-e-Qurtuba, so many lengthy poems, they have been translated, and I have, given the meaning of each and every word there. I know, I have put myself in the position of a reader who does not know the meaning of this word, and then given the meanings of each and every word, then the translation, and then the explanation. So if you also do that, I have, that's written about selected Iqbal's 20 points for the youth. I have selected them. Okay, they are especially, they have they relate to the youth's problem, you see, So it's important, that you do that. It's very nice, that you have a pinpoint, that its importance. So if you do this thing, regular meetings and have selection, from Iqbal's verses, explain to the people, and also write articles for the local newspaper as well. And first of all, that you have to remove this misunderstanding that Iqbal, the Muslim, and, his message is confined to the Muslims only. No. Iqbal has also mentioned human rights. Allama Iqbal has written many articles in English as well. For instance, that he has written an article about democracy. And he has, explained there, and he says, I accept democracy at the moment because there is no other suitable alternative for it. Yes, brother Tareq is right, so far as democracy is concerned, Iqbal has got, two different views, He says, that democracy, Islam, encourages, but with some amendments. When we say a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The amendment is there, Iqbal says, it should be not government of the people, it should be the government of God. God should be the sovereign authority. And then for the people and by the people, that's right, because that after all, human beings should be there to spread this message to other people. So, and mutual consultation is also there. And it is the duty of the Muslim to solve their problem, decide their problem with mutual consultation. Yes, it's very important. And since we are here in this country, or in Europe, I think it's our duty, to dispel those some certain misgivings or wrong information which they have about Islam, and tell them, look, you have not to worry about, but Islam, he also wanted to, that reform Islamic law. He said, according to modern age, Islam is not static. He deplores, that Islamic law has become static for the many centuries. So we have to have, that parliament, something like that, and very people should be there. So I think, that Iqbal's ideas are of practical nature, and they relate, to the contemporary society. And Iqbal's message is not only for this age only, and he himself calls, the poet of the future. Man nawai shaire fardastam. He says, that my future, I am also the poet of future. Because, that Iqbal has related in his poetry very sound principle, you see, of life, very important things, And Iqbal, that has got a very rational approach towards Islam and other people. Well, I think, that Iqbal says, that there's nothing wrong with the European culture, because he says, that we had this jewel, pearl in our pocket, and it has dropped. Now they are getting it and they are using it for their own purpose. So we have to accept it, because it is the same thing which was lost by us. The Holy Prophet said, al-hikmatu dalatul mu'min. Wisdom is the stolen thing, is the lost property of the Muslim. So wherever we have the wisdom, we have to accept it from wherever it comes. It does not mean, that if some other people. So far as, that democracy in a Muslim country, it is unfortunate, that it is not in perfect shape over there. Under the garb of democracy, that they have become very dictators. And instead of becoming their servants, they become their masters. So Europe, we have many facilities here. We have got many benefits here which we could not have in our own country. So we have to appreciate, that many things, they have taken. So we must appreciate we are here and we have to play our part. Come in contact with them closely, they are all, that we, the family of God, come together, sit with them and solve the problems. We can't do that until and unless, that our youth come forward and take part in positively in the political and social affairs here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think just before your question, I will allow the panelists to relate to each other. Bashi, you wish to make
I just want to actually continue what you said by making it a little more practical, As I said in my own presentation, that there's a need for actually making a list of the issue which we are confronted in the society. And then, with the help of those who know Iqbal much better than the youth,
Very nice,
we can find concrete answers
definitely.
of those questions and then take those answers and use in our debates and our, confrontation with the society or our interaction with the society and bring that wisdom further. That link is missing somehow.
Yes.
So we will be very happy that if yourself and by Sabir and others, who can be helpful, because you know Iqbal much more than many young people do, that give us the answers to those questions that younger people are looking
Very
for.
important. I will do that. I will do that.
and
Let's take some questions.
yeah, okay.
Yes.
The first.
I am wondering, is there any difference in the level of awareness of Iqbal and his work in the UK as opposed to Denmark? Do you think?
I think if you look at it at the average point, like the average Danish or the average British, I don't think there's a difference. Maybe at the intellectual levels, you'll see some differences because they have a whole other culture in the UK. But if you take somebody average in London and ask him, I don't think they'll know Iqbal either. And we get back to the point from the beginning. That's where we have a responsibility to take that knowledge, and whether it is to translate it or present it for the public in Denmark.
Yeah.
I enjoy the discussion we have right now, and I especially enjoy the practical part, because what we are judged by is not the words we are talking, it's the walk that we are walking. So I enjoy them. I agree that we need to dispel, and we need to, write about what Iqbal says about Islam. But I love this little story about a mother who goes to her priest or lama and says, my son is eating all these unhealthy things. Please teach him how not to eat healthy things, or unhealthy sugar and everything. And the lama says, okay, we'll come back in 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, she comes back and the lama says, child, you should not eat sugar. You should eat healthy things. And then he was done. And the mother said, why didn't you say that 2 weeks ago? He said, because at that time I was still eating sweets.
Yeah, that's
I believe it's very important that we need to show, we need to be his teachings, and by that show that Islam can be different from what we are shown at the moment.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I just, sorry.
Yeah. No, you go.
Last year there was a conference in European Parliament on Islamophobia. After the conference, a Pakistani journalist from Geo TV, which is an international Pakistani, came to me and said, I'm very happy you talked about this and come with a solution, but don't you think that in Europe there's a need for Europeans to know about Quran and about Islam and Prophet Muhammad's life? What do you think? And here's a camera. I said, there is no need in Europe to know about Prophet and Islam, because that is not their need. What do you mean by that? Are you negating Islam? I said, I'm not negating. What the need in Europe is how I as a Muslim treat my fellow human being. How I am treating my co-workers, people I interact with. And when they will see a decent human being, then maybe they will be interested in what religion and what culture I have. Not the other way around. This is a mistake many Muslim, in inverted commas, do, that they always talk about Islam first and human being later. And I think we should stop this wrong discourse. We should talk first being a good Muslim, a good human being, and then people may be interested. If they're not, fine, I have no problem. In Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, people of the book, they're as good as us in religion-wise. But there is a tendency among Muslims to say we are better because we are Muslim, and that has created a lot of problem actually, and it negates that.
Just to fulfill that point, it says that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sent to the human beings to fulfill the akhlaq, which is how we treat each other. And the thing is, if you look at in a historical context, the Prophet ﷺ never went out to people and said to them, you have to go to Islam because 1, 2, 3. No. He was well known to be the honest one. So through his akhlaq and through his way of trusting people and dealing with people, people automatically wanted to know what is your background and what is your religion. Another very important point, just to go back to the talk we had right before, when it comes to Iqbal or anything else, that today, as I told you guys, I'm the 2nd generation. There are people here in Denmark from Turkey and Pakistan who's the 4th generation. So the last 10 or 20 years has been very difficult in Denmark. There's been a lot of focus on Muslims. But the thing is, we can just lean back and say and be very sorry for ourselves, and we can keep this form of victim mentality, or we can take the responsibility and do whatever we can do. We have the exact same rights as everybody else. We can take a higher education. We can participate in the debate and the public debate. So it's way too easy just to lean back and say that it's so sad we can't do anything. We have a responsibility and the possibilities to make a difference. So,
next question from you.
Thank you very much for hearing about this Iqbal. I never heard about him before, so it was very interesting. But I have the same problem as you, and there were, I think there's too much being a Muslim, because I think it was a very universal, the ideology from Iqbal. And I think we should also have humanity first.
Absolutely.
Because when you see somebody who is a good man or a good woman, you don't need to know their religion. I don't ask anybody because I don't care to believe in anybody else. I care about how you are as a human. And then to democracy and the combination between Iqbal and democracy. I also have a problem. I always ask people, what is your definition of democracy? Because I don't see, in Denmark, I don't think we have democracy, not the way I want democracy. It's the will of the people. And the will of the people, you have a balance between the will of the people and the personal freedom for each and one of us. So I would like very much to hear about what is the definition of democracy according to Iqbal, and also the personal freedom for each man and woman, because I think everybody is equal, and no matter what religion anybody is.
Just to start, just a small comment. The thing is, my idea of democracy, like Islam and everything else, it's not static. It's also dynamic, and it changes. So I don't think you can find an answer for what democracy is. I think you said it very good. It's the will of the people. And also, as you said...
I just imagine, and I don't, the majority can be wrong. So
Exactly. That's what I think you're right. The thing is that if you go back and look at the origin of Islam and the way it was presented many years ago, the idea of equality and liberation was very, very central in the religion. Also when it came to the society or to the ability to own your own stuff. So personally when I discuss with people, I always say that the problem is not within Islam, it's within the interpretation of Islam today. So when people say that Islam needs a reformation, I don't think Islam itself, there's no problem in Islam, there's a problem in the way that we interpret it today. So that's where we have to find both the answers and the solutions.
I work politically, so I can tell you what I understand, because in my discussion with Danish politicians and European, I always tell them, we don't have democracy in Denmark and Europe, we have dictatorship of the majority. Because what is democracy? You have 100 people, 51% says 1, and 49 say 2, So the first one, 51. But if two people from 51 defects and goes to the other, then that one becomes the right. So this is not democracy. For me, democracy is a society where everybody has equal rights, equal responsibilities, but most important of all, equal opportunities. That is what is missing in Denmark. They talk a lot about, especially to ethnic minorities, hey, you should respect democracy, you should do that. And I always tell them, if you want me to work, there should be work, and I should not be discriminated to get a work. So first, when a society is such, where I have equal opportunities together with everybody else, then you can call it democracy. There is a very beautiful couplet, I don't remember the couplet of Iqbal, where he says that in the West, they count people. In the East, we weigh the wisdom. And if somehow we can combine those things, that while we are, today, the most idiotic politician can go on television and start yamming about Islam and he can get elected. Is that democracy? This is not for me democracy. Democracy is which has to be inclusive. No matter who you are, as long as you are paying your tax, you are a law-abiding citizen, you do your duties, then there should be no problem. But that is not how European and Danish society democracies are. It is a dictatorship of the majority. Well,
वो शेर है जी वो जमहूरियत एक तर्ज हुकूमत है कि जिसमें बंदों को गिना करते हैं तोला नहीं करते.
Exactly.
He says, that this democratic system, is based on the counting of heads. And, that he says, they do not weigh the people, they do not appreciate their ability. For instance, if there are two people, they are very wise one. And there are some more people, they are not wise. So according to that, we have to decide, so what is the criterion? That the truth must be the criterion, not the number.
Yes.
Next is Iram. Sorry, we have many questions. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for the good, short and good, concise speeches. I was thinking about in the discussion where you said that the ideal is to look at humanity and humanism, but I think that is the ideal. The reality is that when you see another person, you are automatically you're coding that person in some category or another. So when I see you, Tareq, yes, I will see your black hair, I will see that you look Middle Eastern, and I will look at you and think, okay, maybe you are this and that kind of person. And I will look at you, Bashi, and I'll say, oh, you look dark, you are from that side of the world. I'll look at you and I'll say, okay, you must be a white individual from this part of the world. The ideal is to look at a human being, but what we do daily is the opposite. We are categorizing, we are sorting people into different categories. And what do we do? I think we need to realize that the basic premise of being a human is that we categorize people. So the ideal is good in itself, but what we do daily is something else. So how do we deal with that? I just taught a course in racism and whiteness, including Islamophobia, where we actually had, a whole course with white students, making them aware of their whiteness. So whiteness is not something which is, is not invisible, but it is invisible in the West, in the world we live in, because what is marked out is the darkness, is what is what is looking different. We need to actually, if we want to make a difference, we need to change the basic premises of what it means to be a human being, of what we think about when we say humanity, and that is that we have to realize that we are constantly categorizing each other, and be constantly aware of that which power structures are these categorizations linked to. So, and that's what I'm saying. It's good to say humanity and look at the human being, but we have to look at reality as well, and we have to address that reality to actually make a change. And the second part is, yes, actually, I'm sorry I disappointed you with my face.
No.
But the fact is, I'm 34. Tareq is 21, he has the energy and will to make a change.
And I'm 70 and I do the same. So, come on, this argument is... Oh, come on.
You're very special.
But, and I'm this generation as well, but I must admit I'm tired of the debate. And again, debate is not, I enjoy that we have this talk and we try to, but the basic, again, the premises, the discursive premises of the debate is wrong. They're basically wrong. And if we don't address that basic premises, that basic premises of Islam is basically against Danishness, and these discourses that are, living in the political society and the debate, we can't actually.
That's why we need to change the premises to start with.
Yes, but when you go into the media debate, you can try to change it, but you will most often be a part of the mill and just be, swung around and be categorized as, oh, Tareq, he's the one who is, Middle Eastern, blah, blah, blah. So I commend what you're doing, and I'm not saying that it's wrong. I really believe that we need people like you. I'm actually very proud of people like you. Feel second generation Muslim background and doing something. But I'm talking from the other perspective that we are a lot of people who are actually tired of the basic premises of debate, which we feel that they're not being changed. We're just talking into the present discourse that is here, and we're not actually making a difference in actually changing people's views on Islam and views on what it means to be different. Unless we actually make people aware that, being a Dane, being white, it's just another category, just as Islam, Muslimness, and otherness is. So, I don't know, that's
just a small comment to your last thing is that at some point I fully agree with you. If you go into the debate, it doesn't take much time before you become a part of the game. But that's why you have to pick your battles. So the last 6 months I get phone calls almost daily from different programs asking me if I want to comment on burqas, on headscarves, and all kinds of different things. And every single time I say no, because I don't want to be the one who's well known only to talk about immigration or about Islam. I want to talk about the educational system or the tax system or anything else. So, because I think there's no alternative to not be a part of the debate. The alternative is just to sit back and complain. Not that I'm saying that you did that, but the alternative is not realistic at all. So we have to slowly try to change the system from within.
For that issue especially, I think we should have another debate, because that is, you're touching practical ways how to deal that. And I am a best example. Since '82, I am fighting against the whole society and I have not given up. So this can be done, but let's take it some other day. But you talked about, I am a great believer of humanism, because I work with that. And just before I came here, I gave a speech, another forum, it's an interfaith forum about human values. So I just want to tell you 5 points which I mentioned, which can be useful for Muslim youth. First is self-awareness. Second is self-realization. Third is a prejudice-free mind. Fourth is a heart which is warm and kind. And the fifth, a spirit which is progressive. If Muslim youth can live up to that, believe me, a lot of their problem can be solved.
Good.
Sorry.
We have 2 questions here from sometime. First,
yeah, I got 2 things. First one, I totally understand your thoughts, and I personally feel them also in my way. But it's interesting because right now is the time. We could use one of Jagata's sentences, now or never, because in my opinion, problem appears only when there is a solution, and problem appears only at the time when they need a solution. So this time, there's focus on us, so we have to talk at this moment, because the problem won't appear if we have to talk. And the second thing was about democracy. I think it's interesting about discussing democracy, because we are so confused about understanding democracy, because we don't know specifically what democracy is. If we look at it historically, back to Ashoka in India, the first maybe democracy in the world, that every thing was based on spirituality, morality, and ethics. don't kill animals, like the hardcore democracy, right? To change everything. And the next democracy that today's world are based on, that appeared in Greece, the democracy in a small city where it was based on that every people in a city should have a seat on the presidency every year. So there was not one politician, everybody was a politician. And it's interesting because Tareq mentioned it too earlier that our democracy is stuffed, it's not moving. For 150 years it hasn't moved. So what we're searching is something that we are not in possession of. So we have to solve this democracy together. A revolution is always starts when everybody agrees, right? But it starts somewhere. Start with the idea, and if I am a knowledge of the truth that this is the right thing, and I'm not fighting against it, it would start somewhere and aim to the right democracy. But we have to fight with us rather than fighting with each other, because that's what we do. We always talk about how to change everything, why they don't understand us. If we understand ourselves, ultimately everybody will understand us. Yeah, that was my point.
Should we take some
Yes,
more questions?
please,
Yeah.
concrete questions.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Tareq, to you too, to see you in person,
Thank you.
and Bashi, and Baka Sahab. It has been a great honor to say hello to you. I don't have any question except to extend a line of information, and that is about, it has been said that Iqbal is maybe not available in Denmark. Yes, Iqbal is available in Denmark, provided you seek. How you get it? Iqbal has been translated into Iqbal in Danish language in 1952. There are 15 poems of Iqbal which are available. And that is in a book which is of Danish writers called Bjørnens Digte. You can look it down and find out mainly in the Royal Navy. Secondly, some articles on Iqbal and his work have been published in a magazine which was published in 1970 by an organization called Mellem Folkelig Samvirke. They have had a magazine called Contact. They have published series-wise some articles on Iqbal, especially on Iqbal's philosophy of myself. On the other hand, you should find out the research articles and the essays and theses of Professor Asmussen, who have also written many books on Islam. He was a very great scholar of Islam, and especially on Palestine issue, and Iqbal. He have translated Iqbal's lot of work into Danish language, which is available in Aarhus State and University Library and in the Royal Library of Copenhagen. You can also ask them. Secondly, there is very interesting thing that while Iqbal was studying in Germany, there was a Danish scholar, Mr. Some S, which I don't remember for what it stands, Christensen, who have written a thesis on Ghazali, Imam Ghazali. And he wanted to discuss on that one, that what he have written is correct or how it is. And he talked to some of his people in England, and they recommended him that he should send it to young Iqbal, who was still under studies in Germany. And Iqbal have given his comments on his thesis and have also written a essay on Ghazali. They both in original typed are available in the archives of Sword Diamond Royal Library, and they are worth reading. That how young Iqbal looks at Ghazali and his ideas, and what was the wrong in Iqbal's eyes, what Danish scholars have taken. And there are so many things on Iqbal, but many Danish writers, they have quoted Iqbal. You will be surprised to hear that a Danish priest who was working in Srirampur, the old capital of the Danish colonial time in India, he went to meet him in Sialkot. And they discussed about Jesus. And Sirampur was the capital of Danish colony in those days, where they start publishing and spreading Christianity in the eastern India. And he discussed some problems. And his notebook, the notebook of the priest, is very interesting to read. What was the conversation and what was the Iqbal's answer about how the Jesus birth was created. Wonderful. So you just seek and go and find out. There is a lot of things about Iqbal in Danish libraries, but of course not at this level. Mr. Bashi was mentioning, and it is a great need of the time, that if you have to identify yourself, you have to explain yourself, you have to introduce Iqbal at your own. No Dan will do it. They will use it for their purpose, but not to introduce him. Thank you.
We have time to a last question, if there is a last question or comment. Is it? Maybe no. Yes.
It was about what was it? When you want to implement, or this difference for those ones who are coming as strangers, as we are coming as strangers to Denmark, to what was I going to say? It was somebody said about, I think it was you, about Muslim to get all the discussion is about Muslims or Islam, and it's like a polarizing in the society. Oh yeah, then, but I think it's very important. Now I'm coming from Faroe Islands. When we go into another society, we have to reach out also to show who we are, and also to learn who the others are. Because I think in Denmark, Danes are very close. They are behind their houses or their gardens, and have a nice garden, and they are not very social. I remember when we came to Denmark, I had to teach our children about the differences in Faroe Islands. When you enter a house or you go to somebody, you open the door and then you knock on the door and you shout, "Is somebody home?" So in Faroe Islands they were laughing when they were standing outside to knock on the door. When they came back to Denmark, of course, they went to their friends, so they opened the door and they went into the house. And then the Danes said, "But you're very rude children." They're just
I will at the end thank very much to Professor Mohammed Sharif Baga joining us today with a very inspirative lecture, and also to Usma Rehman and Iram Kavaja for their presentations, and of course to Bashi and Tareq Hussaen. Thank you so much.